Well, hey everybody, and welcome to another episode of Keys to the Shop, where we give you insights, inspiration, and the tools you need to grow as a coffee service professional. My name is Chris DeFirio. I'm your host for the show. Thank you for being here, and don't forget to subscribe to the show. Stay updated with new offerings from Keys to the Shop on the website, keystotheshop.com. We just had our webinar series. Pretty soon going to put out something else, probably more of a course, so take a look at that when you have the opportunity. I'll make announcements about that. But we are also doing our key holder coaching groups again. That is coming in the fall. If you're a coffee shop owner and you've been in the business of cafe operations and leadership as the owner for the last couple of years at least, we want you to look into being a key holder coaching group member. This is a peer-to-peer mastermind style cohort that meets over 6 months. It is 2-hour sessions 12 times over the 6 months, and we get to explore all of the relevant and specific topics that our members bring to the conversation, each person helping the other. This mutual support of encouragement, insights, sometimes challenge, giving and exchanging tools to just run a better coffee shop and be well in it. It's pretty isolating being a coffee shop owner. Getting that kind of perspective and camaraderie in this group is huge. So this is our 3rd year doing this. I would love for you to sign up. Check the link in the show notes or just email chris@keystotheshop.com to learn more. Now, today's episode is brought to you by yourbrandcafe.com. So if you're looking for printed products in your cafe, things like sleeves and cups and containers and the like, go to yourbrandcafe.com and check them out. Your Brand Cafe puts the pricing right on the site. There's no quote request, no waiting back and forth and all of that. There's just a 1 case minimum, not low minimums, just a 1 case minimum. You just order what you need right now, and there's free shipping on every custom order. No threshold, just every custom order is free shipping. Go to yourbrandcafe.com, pick your product, upload your logo, and their art team just takes it from there. Cafes all over have trusted Your Brand Cafe for a long time, and it is worth your time to check them out at Your Brand Cafe. Now, today's episode is also brought to you by the Pacific Barista Series. Longtime OGs in the world of plant-based beverages. They have been doing this because they are passionate about supplying you with an excellent product to serve to your customers. Tested by baristas, their Barista Series is designed to perform on the bar. Stands up to the heat from steaming, great texture. It also creates a lot of balance in the cup. Check them out at pacificfoodservice.com. If you're looking for the best plant-based beverages for your customers, check out the Barista Series from Pacific. I want to introduce you to our guest today, and that is Ewelina Kania. So Ewelina has spent over a decade in hospitality, starting out as a barista before she joined Prufrock Coffee in London. And as the GM there, during an 8-year stretch, she ran the entire operation. Tested new concepts, and navigated the less glamorous realities of the industry, including leadership transitions, operational hurdles, and a global pandemic, of course. And she later worked as the chief operating officer at Barista Hustle Tools, which allowed her to really dive deep into product logistics and global supply chains. And today, Ewelina is head of operations and logistics at Natura Copenhagen, which is a company that's connecting small-scale growers with local chefs. And for her, moving from specialty coffee to farm-grown produce is pretty seamless as far as transitions go. Both industries rely on passionate people who care deeply about product quality and origin. And across every role that Ewelina has had, she has focused on one core principle, which is that a happy and supported team leads to stronger business and a great guest experience, just a better guest experience when people are taken care of. And so today we're going to be getting to talk with Ewelina about her experiences in coffee and in moving to the ingredients and food side of logistics and farms. That's really fascinating. And a lot of our time today is spent diving into that philosophy that you just heard about, how to create happy, well cared for, supported teams in the coffee shop. And it's not always easy, as you know, and Ewelina knows this better than a lot of people and has done this very successfully. So this is going to be very valuable. Those of you who are listening, who are running coffee shops, really know that people are the point. of what we're doing. And when you get that part right, everything else kind of falls into place. And so Ewelina is really going to help you with her insights today from her own experience at some of the best businesses in coffee. So let's get right to it. Here now is my conversation with Ewelina Kania. Ewelina, welcome to Keys to the Shop. How's it going today?
Yeah, it's great. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it is one of those things that always is a focus in cafes is how can we work better, not just with our business, but with people. And when I say business, I mean like the workflow, the logistics, but there's a little bit more complexity when you're working with a team of individuals in a coffee shop. And you've got an incredible amount of experience in this with your work at Prufrock and even now with your work in food logistics and supply chain and that kind of work. So great to have you on the show because people today, especially as menus start to increase and expectations of coffee shops from customers' perspective start to increase, we just need to focus in on what we're doing. But how did you find yourself in the coffee world to begin with? It seems like logistics and workflow and this kind of thing, that's your jam. Like that's you like that. Was that why you got into coffee, or was that more of a maybe I'll get a job as a barista and oh, this is a fascinating world? How did that happen?
No, it was actually an accident. I was full-time studying and I came across this lovely little cafe in the city I was studying in. And I walked in and I just loved the atmosphere in there. And it was kind of a silly move of me, I guess, because I had a full-time, studies and a lot of last year exams and everything. But I reached out to the owner and I was like, are you guys looking for anyone? Because I just loved the way this place made me feel. And that's how I got into coffee. And he was kind of like, yeah, sure. But like, what do you know about coffee? And I was like, I mean, how much can there be? Like there's not a coffee is coffee. Like what do you want to know? And then he started telling me things and I was like, no idea about any of that. So he was like, okay, I will give you a month and I will send you some resources. If you come back after a month and we can talk about coffee, you're going to get a job. So that's what happened. I got hooked. And I realized that there is a world I had no idea about, and that there's a lot of things that I would love to learn. And beside the place that made me feel really good, I then found a space that had lovely atmosphere and that I could learn a lot at. And that's how I got into it. And then never looked back.
Yeah, that takes a lot of dedication to go and then study and come back. You must have really been taken with this cafe, and we're talking about Prufrock.
No. It was actually before Prufrock.
Really?
Yes. Yeah, I was like working in a small cafe in Poland, and that place, like. It's quite interesting because it was only, the way they made me feel that really like made an impact. And I kind of, obviously it's always nice to have extra money as a student, I guess. But I didn't really need full-time job at that time. So I kind of like really liked the idea of joining the place just because it made me feel really good.
Well, that seems like now you've gone into the feeling of a customer of that place, but then you got hired to work there. What was it like to work on the other side of the counter?
It was definitely, like different in a way, but then I felt like, I'm the person that can make people feel the same way I felt when I first came there. So it was quite empowering, I guess, in a way. But then also I really liked the idea of learning more. And, the deeper I got into coffee, the more I realized how little or how nothing I knew back then. So yeah, there's definitely a long learning process, I guess, that never ends. But that's the
Yeah.
beauty of it.
As a student, as a student of coffee, you were literally a student, but also a student of coffee and taking joy in facilitating other people's joy in the coffee. At what point did you feel that you had a good grip on the logistics behind the bar, the workflow, the details, to where you could see that you could manage all of those things? You're working with a team, of course, but was it 6 months? Was it 8 months? A year? two
No,
years?
it was more. It was more.
Oh,
It
yeah.
took some time to learn. It took some time to, I guess, develop as well. And then I've also moved countries, and I found myself at Prufrock, yes, and I was at Prufrock for quite a while, and then there was an opportunity to take on, I think, first assistant manager role, which made me realize that there is the same feeling that you can give to customers, when they come and they can feel like really good. You can do the same with the team. And that's, I think, when I realized that I really enjoyed the leadership role. And that was something that, yeah, made fun and I think gave me purpose as well. And yeah, it was amazing time building the team and making sure that everything would work smoothly, like operations, logistics, finance, and everything.
Tell me more about that. What is it about the leadership opportunity that you found attractive enough to apply for it? Was it like you say, having everything come together and having this, now I get to facilitate the success of baristas? What attracted you to that?
So I think from like on reflection, it's probably something about seeing people grow. I didn't realize it back then, but I know now that probably one of the greatest joys of my job is seeing how people develop and how they grow into roles. Seeing, somebody who's been coming late and who's been making troubles to be actually like super responsible person and be the person that leads other people. That's something I think is like one of the greatest joy of being in a leadership position. And I think that's something that I know now was probably the thing that hooked me. I didn't know it like 8 years ago. So it's something I think I've learned over time.
Okay, so you learned that. How did you learn it? Because people listening to you thinking about the people in their cafe that are troublemakers, or they have issues, and they're thinking, well, I don't know if I can take that person and change them. But you're saying that's one of the joys, and it sounds like you learned how to work with people towards a specific goal over time. What are the lessons you learned to make you a good leader, an effective leader, let's say?
I think there's a lot of things to it, but there's definitely a big part of it, which is like working towards a shared goal, and towards something that everybody's aligned on, making sure that everybody's clear on what's going on. I feel like there's oftentimes people are unsure what they are doing and why they are doing things specific way. I think it's really important to make sure everybody's on the same page. But then also it's really important to have like clear communication between like team members, but also I think between customers and the team, making sure that they can communicate what they want to communicate and get from their customers what is really important. And then I think also really important one is like dependability, making sure that, people are accountable for their actions, but also making sure that the team can follow through, and that you as a leader, that you can follow through on your promises. Like, I feel like there's nothing worse than a leader who like promises a lot of things and then not being able to deliver on that. Yes, it's like, better under promise and over deliver than the other way around.
Baristas pick up on that pretty quickly, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. It sounds like you have experience doing it and then feeling, I should under promise, over deliver. Do you have some challenges that taught you to not do that?
Oh, definitely. Like, there's always a thing, you are like, I don't know. Even simple things like we are, I don't know, changing our POS system next week or in 2 weeks, and then it gets delayed and everybody kind of like, loses the momentum. So I think it's really important to like be realistic, and if things don't go the way you want them to go, like be also honest. Like, I think having a manager who is not honest is also really tricky. Like, saying that you've made a mistake is absolutely fine, but trying to hide a mistake is never going down well.
Yes, because they'll think, what else have you hidden from me?
Yes.
Right?
Yes, exactly. Absolutely.
So your coffee shop, now you're going from your first cafe, you work at now at Prufrock, and you're in charge of people and process, right? Caring for the space, caring for the people. And I'm curious about how you organized your time to be effective.
That's a very good question. So it was quite a process, like getting between different roles as well, and making sure I can effectively do like, my new roles and the new things that come with it, but at the same time still being able to support the team. I think there's a lot in prioritizing things and making sure that the things that really need to get done first, but also making sure that there's enough time to check in on people and with people, and making sure that they are doing well. I think there's a great advantage and amazing power in one-to-one meetings with people, where they feel heard and where they feel like somebody actually cares about them. It makes them feel like they want to do a good job and like they want to, be a part of something bigger as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would say prioritizing things and making sure that first things get done, and then whatever can wait, and there is, good old, I think task management ways of doing things.
Yeah. Well, a lot of people have a hard time prioritizing because everything seems important. And so they want to do everything right away. Do you have a rubric that you use, or a filter to say, here, at least for your cafe, here are the most important things I need to focus on this week, and here's what can wait? Like, how do you discern between those?
It would depend, between, there are different times, I guess, in a lifetime of a cafe, and different things get different priority. But I would say probably making sure that your people are right is the priority, because you can't run without them. But then also, I think there is a great gift with having people around you. And that's probably one of the things that I've learned from during my time managing is probably not delegating enough in my early days. I think people, your baristas or the people in the cafe, they definitely want to help and and they take like great pride in what they do, and they really want to help and be needed. So I think one of the things I did very early on is like try to do everything myself, like tried, a lot of people did that, tried to like make sure that, nobody gets stretched, like everybody just does enough. But then, like me as a manager, I would get more and more stretched. And then I came to a point where I realized that actually people loved helping, and it empowers them and it makes them feel really good. It makes them feel very valued. So I think it was a big eye opener for me that actually, like, the more you delegate, the better the team gets, the more committed they are, and the more appreciated they feel as well.
When you give somebody a task, because we talk about delegation a fair bit on the show, sometimes it's done in a way that's not effective, or it might actually get the opposite result. What do you do to delegate in a way that truly is empowering rather than just demoralizing?
Yeah, definitely. I think there's a couple of steps. Like, first thing is to probably be aligned on what actually are you delegating and what do you want to achieve. But then also making sure that the person that you want the task to do, like that they are clear on what they are actually supposed to do, that they know the steps. And then I would say, obviously, if it's something more complex, doing it a couple of times with them and making sure that they really understood the process and know what they are doing. And then also like following up on it and making sure that I would also get feedback on how did it go. Like, if it's something that's like recurring, like how did that feel and how did it go and how can we make it better? Like, if there was another person to do it, like, can we do something different? I think that would be my way of doing it.
It's all very relational. It's all very, you mentioned a lot of communication is at the core of how you approach what you do. And when I think about things like, we had John Gordon on the show and talking about workflow, we were talking about lean manufacturing and management, and for that's a lot of cerebral, like ones and zeros and spaghetti maps and that kind of thing. And what people don't, this was one of those early century mistakes that was made with supply chain or workflow management in factories, is they failed to realize that people are not machines, and they couldn't actually make them as productive as a machine. In fact, it had negative implications. Like the return on investment was reversed when you tried to make them productive that way. So you have this goal for the business that says, in order for us to make the rent, to pay the staff, we need to have certain ticket numbers. Like our average ticket needs to be this much, our labor needs to be that much. But then you have to remain relational with people and approachable. What's the trick to doing that while you have these hard goals for business? You then have soft skills that need to be applied in your communication.
I think, to be honest, like, I might be wrong, but I think that's the only way of doing it, because obviously once you get a little bit behind and understand people and make sure that the communication is there and make sure that you're aligned on the goals and make sure that they know what they are doing, they care. And I think once they care, they really take ownership and they really want to do a great job. And once you have that combined with like their knowledge and their skills, I think most of the time you can reach your goals and you can, have this like North Star of like, okay, here's what we need to do. Here's the numbers. Like, being clear on the numbers with them and being clear with like, okay, guys, like we've not done that well this month is part of the clear communication. And this part of, I guess maybe not always very sweet feedback, but rather, like harsher feedback, which I think is also important. But I think having a team that cares is like the base for me for anything. And that applies actually like across industries and, in my current job right now as well. Like it's very much the same thing, building a team that cares, that you can rely on, and that you can trust that they will do what you need them to do is really like a foundational piece. And obviously, like, all of the structures and all of the things are really important and are going to play a big role in what you're doing. But if you don't have team that cares, they're not going to do a good job because they just want to go home and, like clock in and clock out, which is like, yeah.
Managing conflict is a part of this. Conflict can be between people, maybe two people whose personalities clash, but they have the same goal. They love what you're doing at the cafe. They're on board, but they're just like butting heads. And then there's conflict where the person we thought they were aligned, but they switch. Those are two distinct kinds of conflicts that I think we all deal with. How did you work through those two situations?
So the first one, where you say you have two people that clash, I would say that's an interesting one, because that's probably one that you see as a manager from the outside, and you kind of like, see the situation happening, not necessarily hear about it, but you see it yourself. And then I think it's really important to like catch it and catch it early, but not necessarily escalate it privately, like publicly, but just bring it into like a private space and make sure that you take note of it at the time, but you bring it with like the people one-on-one, and that you talk through it with each person individually, not taking sides, making sure that you stay neutral and curious, possibly, but not judging, really, making sure that you're not taking any side. And then if needed, I would say facilitate a conversation between the people, because very often it comes down to misunderstanding. So you just bring the two people together and you say, okay, let's figure it out. Let's make sure that we can move forward. What's the problem? And then it turns out quite often there is no problem. Like it was just a small misunderstanding, which if you can catch it early, it's pretty easy thing to solve. But then I think also it's really important to follow up on it and just check in, make sure it's, like not one-time fix, but just make sure that those two people are actually okay and that they can move forward and work together. And I think it also goes back a little bit to this like culture of respect, and communication and respecting each other. But also, like the thing with accountability for your own actions as well. I think there's a big part of, the way we behave towards the customers. It's also obviously partly the way we want our team to behave in between each other as well. And then the second one that you've asked, if somebody changes, if somebody flips, that obviously happens as well. And I think, again, it's probably really important to be honest and open. And I think, like if there's somebody who is not necessarily aligned on the goal that everybody else goes towards, then you're not going to have a great time working with the team. So I think it's important, again, to catch it early, to go through what's the issue, what's the problem, and if needed, like to part ways. Like I think there's nothing wrong with, like changing your opinion or the way that you think, the things have been done as a person who is employed, and then changing your mind as a barista or manager. But then I think it's also fair on everybody else if this person leaves before there's any like sourness in the air.
That's culture. The culture of your cafe, right, is affected by the relationships in the cafe. And if I can think about some of the things people could be putting up in protest, it would be, well, I don't have time to be a babysitter for people and to manage conflict and all of this other stuff. I've got a business to run. And maybe the response could be, that is your business.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. It's a big part of your business. Yeah, I think, I guess we see it over and over. Like sometimes people who get into like managerial positions in the cafes are people who love coffee, but really don't like people. So I think there's, it's a great material for a head barista, but not necessarily for a manager.
Yeah, who is focused on the people. And you're in the same kind of position now where you have you're managing complexities, but there's people involved as well. Talk to us a little bit about this pivot from coffee to food to working at Natura. What that role entails. How is it similar? How is it different?
Yeah, of course. It is quite similar. So in a way, it's even more like perishable goods. So working with fresh fruits and veg, it's very exciting because it's a lot of like great produce, but it's like working with coffee on steroids because you're not having coffee just on the shelves sitting there, but you have products that actually get bad within days. So there's a lot of complexity in that. And I guess I've moved into like more logistics and operations with my role at Barista Hustle, where I was managing operations on like, I would say global scale, like, transporting things around on the continent. And I think that's what hooked me. And my role right now is head of operations and logistics. And there's a lot of logistics involved into bringing fresh produce into the warehouse, making sure it leaves on time, making sure it comes on time, making sure that everybody gets the produce that they need to get and that they get it as soon as possible before it actually goes bad. But there is a lot of the same work in terms of working with small scale farmers, very special products, making sure that the full supply chain is transparent and making sure that everyone from the beginning to the end actually is being appreciated for their work and gets the best products for the best price. And I think there's a lot of different aspects to my job, but there's a big part of people management as well, which is great.
That's really interesting that there's, this window of perishability and the urgency that comes along with it, where, if you're all of your history of working with people and controlling your own emotions and kind of taking a stepwise approach to relationships probably prepared you to handle the pressure of a shorter window of time. Because I think other people might be just like emoting and be a little stressed out that this is highly volatile.
Yes, it is. But there's also like, there's amazing part of it when, like you see pallets of food coming in and it's like the best fresh produce from like small farmers in Italy. And it's just amazing feeling, to be able to actually taste all of the things on the tasting notes from the coffee bags that you never thought, there's a lot.
What is it in terms of this world that you're involved with now that you think we can learn? We can take a lesson from how things are run, the relationships that people have between suppliers and importers, managers, that world of ingredients and food versus coffee. How can we improve by looking to that example?
I think there's a lot of, supplier relationships, grower relationships with people. And obviously the part of seasonality that are very similar in both, food and coffee. I would think that there's a big part, in shortening the supply chain. And obviously it's not that possible with coffee, just, because it's a very different product. But I think we definitely, both in food and in coffee, should work on protecting biodiversity and making sure that, we protect the livelihoods of people who grow our food. It's quite crazy to learn about, some 90-year-old farmers in Italy who are the last generation that grow, a certain variety of tomato. And I think the same applies to coffee. There are varieties that, are not being celebrated as much as they should be. But then also, when it comes to educating customers about the value of seasonality and the quality, I think in the coffee industry, we talk a lot about, seasonality and, the Kenyans are in season and then all of the Costa Ricans come to season. But then if you look at people who actually work in coffee, they don't necessarily follow seasons when it comes to eating, their food. They would go to supermarket and expect their strawberries to be in there all year round. And I think there's a lot that actually coffee people can learn from their own, industry, looking into food, if that makes sense. Yeah. And I think the other way around, I think people in food can also learn a lot from coffee industry and can learn about celebrating farmers. And I know it's different in different regions of the world, but it feels like there's very little celebrating of the farmers when it comes to regular produce. I think in coffee industry, we are pretty good with that, especially when it comes to specialty, you're really focusing on the farmer and making sure that he's celebrated. Whereas with food, it's very, very rarely you hear about a farmer that grows, a certain fruit or veg. So I think there's a lot of learnings both ways.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It almost feels like if it's not being celebrated, but if there's sustainable trade happening in the food and the food world, that they're surviving based on their relationships with the people that buy their produce. And that makes me think that if they get more celebration, that's great. But sometimes in coffee, we celebrate a lot, but we don't have substantive structures underneath the celebration to facilitate long-term relationships. So, not to be cynical or anything, but sometimes there's a lot of photos and videos and words. But what can we do to make it a little bit more of a business that takes care of people actually instead of just verbally?
Definitely. So I think just from my recent work, we do a lot of crop planning with farmers, which I think is one of the things that people do already in coffee industry, but I think we should have more of that. Committing to buying a harvest from a farmer, not necessarily knowing what's coming, paying upfront or agreeing to a certain prices upfront, which might not always go to plan. Like we've got recently some products that didn't necessarily go to plan. They weren't as sweet as we've predicted them to be. But then at the end of the day, we've committed to buying certain amount of the product. And I think it's just fair, if a farmer spent his whole spring and summer growing the thing, to actually pay him for it. So I think there's definitely that, but then also making sure that we can work with the same farmer over and over. It's not like a one-off thing, but being able to actually, commit to grow with the farmer, like making sure that, okay, like we're going to support you and we're going to make sure that we will find customers to buy your products. And, we have like 25-year-old relationships with growers in Italy and in France. And we have those people who get to, experiment and celebrate their produce. And, we have the guy who grows tomatoes just like around the Vesuvio and in Italy. And he has those seeds that his grandfather, had, and nobody else grows the tomato that he grows. So there's, like amazing stories and amazing people behind it. So I think that's something that should definitely be celebrated, but it's something that takes time and takes the long-term view. It's not something that you only do 1 year and then you're done. It's like a long-term relationship.
Last question for you here. How does a coffee shop help in this whole supply chain, taking care of people, since customers are coming in, experiencing coffee? How does a well-run coffee shop make a difference?
That's a good question. I think there's a couple of things to it. Like obviously, there's here and now where we have, customers and the baristas, and some people would start from a customer as the, last person in the chain that actually, gets the amazing feeling of being in the cafe, but also gets the privilege of, getting the product. But then I feel like there's tons of people behind that need to be celebrated and that actually make all of it possible. So I think it's like a full chain that should be celebrated, from the farmer that actually, grew the products, and then all the way through, the roastery and all of the people in the wet mills and all of the people then later on, like in transport, and in the roasteries, and then all of the people in the coffee shop, which does not always only include baristas, but also, like all of the servers and all of the dish people and all of the chefs, that not necessarily, you can't necessarily see. But I think the cafes are really important part for all of those people in all of those people's lives. And I guess going back to like where we started and, communication and being able to give people like meaning when they come to work, I think there's a big part for, all of those people to be part of it and making sure that everybody's aligned on the goals, making sure that, the farmer that you worked with for 20 years knows that the product you're going to serve to your customer is really important, is like crucial. And then it goes throughout the whole chain.
Wonderful. Thank you for being on the show, Ewelina. This was insightful. It was great. And how can people stay plugged into what you're up to?
Oh, that's a good question. I guess good old Instagram and LinkedIn. I'm trying to get off socials a little bit. But there's always, always a way to reach out and definitely, see a lot of fruits and veg and everything was in season.
Awesome. Thanks so much. Great to have you on the show.
Thank you. Thanks.
Okay, everyone. Well, that's it for our show. I hope that you had a great time listening to Ewelina. I know I did. I mean, there's just it sounds simple. I just want to say it sounds simple, like, oh yeah, we're going to look out for people. It requires putting yourself on the line and entering in fully to these relationships and determining ahead of time that the relationships are the point and that people are the point. And from that decision emerges this incredible growth in a business. This is the same way you cultivate a product like coffee or the ingredients that Ewelina works with every day today. That cultivation is about attention. It's about focusing on the minutia and being patient and developing some harvest that tastes amazing. And I'll tell you something about teamwork and culture. When you get it right and you work hard at it, what the harvest brings is something that tastes just as good as the thing that you're serving in the cafe. So thank you, Ewelina, for being on the show and showing us how to do this in our cafes. You can find the link to Ewelina's Instagram in the show notes, as well as a link to Natura and the website there to learn more about what they do. And if you're interested in contacting Keys to the Shop, you can just reach out directly to me on an Instagram direct message. You can email chris@keystotheshop.com. And you can click the link in the show notes to set up a discovery call to ask about consulting and coaching, whether you're starting a new coffee shop or you're a coffee shop who wants somebody to come in and help assess and give a cafe audit and then coach you through afterwards, you and your team working on whatever it is we find, whether that's stuff that needs to be focused on because it's amazing and needs more energy, or it's stuff that's in the way and it needs to be fixed and refined. I've done this for the last 10 years with coffee shops just like yours. I would love to talk about it with you. Just reach out, chris@keystotheshop.com, or check the link in the show notes, as well as the link for our key holder coaching groups, transformational community for coffee shop owners. That's what we're all about, and it could be the right fit for you. So reach out, chris@keystotheshop.com. So that's it, everyone. Thank you so much. And as always, I hope that this episode has truly given you keys to the shop.